So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Prop Funder community webinar, Wednesday, the 15th of October. Where is the time going? We're soon heading towards Christmas, but yeah, the years just seem to keep going around. So welcome today to my two special guests, Shiro and Tom. How are you guys?
Hi David, all good. How are you?
Hi, David.
Yeah, keeping busy. Just walking through Belfast earlier there, and we're going to start hearing Christmas music pretty soon, which is
Hello.
Absolutely.
insane. So listen, welcome everyone. We're going to get straight into it. Today we were focusing very much on sort of high-end commercial. Ironically, I'm actually based in a Regis office in Belfast today, so I'm with the enemy, as Tom pointed out before we came live. So you'll forgive me for being in the enemy, but I'll give you something to compare
Yes, yeah.
as we can do.
Absolutely.
But listen, great to have you guys on. Let's get
Great to be on.
straight into this here in a big way. I'm really looking forward to this because there's so much we can talk about. And I'll mention the fact that I was with you a week or so ago in a minute. But look, we always like to start off just as an update of just really what's happening, any big market news around property. Some of our attendees and people who watch the recording just like to catch up on what's making the news. So I suppose, guys, getting your input as well. Conservatives made a wee bit of a splash. Don't know if it's headline grabbing only, but um, Tories would scrap stamp duty. I think what really caught my attention, guys, was the graph below. And then 2024, 11.6 billion was raised from stamp duty. Had you guys realized that, or were you
And
aware
that's
of that?
apparently in a slow market as well. So it just shows, doesn't it?
That's a good point. The market is slower, so like that is a significant amount of money coming into the government coffers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't think we've probably quite appreciated how much it was. But now you look at that, you go, and as Tom said, imagine when we're a couple of years down the line when things are really starting to ramp up. It's huge.
Yeah, big revenue. And whether or not it suits a government to reduce it a bit by way of trying to win votes,
I was going
it's
to say
kind
that,
of
I mean, that headline looks to me like a typical, um, a headline to grab attention, which is done exactly that. So um,
yeah.
I don't think the reality of the situation is they probably can't afford to scrap it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. So, some of the latest last couple of days, people are talking about mortgage rates creeping back up. Is that something you guys are aware and just from being in the market?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
yeah.
actually, I was sorry, Tom. I was
No
talking
problem.
to one of our funders a few hours ago, who lends. They're not a huge funder. They probably do about 100 million a year, and they were saying that a lot of their developers who have got properties in the south, who are trying to sell, they're having a lot of trouble with buyers. Exactly this headline where mortgages, they're kind of, do we really want to buy now? Shall we wait? Don't know what's happening with the lending. Rates seem to be going up and down like a yo-yo. So it's directly impacting developers' abilities to exit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Are you going to
Yeah.
comment on that, Tom?
I was just going to say, I think we were all expecting inflation to come down a bit more by now, but clearly the banks aren't quite thinking the same. So yeah,
Yeah, it's one of the joys, one of the intangible, uncontrollable aspects of the world of property, eh? The other one that caught my attention, and it was partly due to the site visit I did with you guys a week or so ago, and that is around the importance of location, particularly within big cities. So, this article was around London and properties being sort of 43K extra if you're near a sort of a rail line. Is that something similar for Manchester?
Yes, particularly we've noticed it recent years. We focus a lot of our time on Stockport, which is I suppose you call it Manchester's sort of second town. Um, and that is mainly the price increases there and the improvement in the economy there has been mainly driven by the fact it's on the main train line. Gets to London in less than 2 hours from there. So it's a big driver up here as well, up north.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose particularly in inner cities, if you can be right near
Yeah.
transport links, it just makes sense. We're such a the way we are as human beings. We want everything immediately. We want to be where we're going immediately.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Which is key. So there were just some things that I picked out for quick discussion. Just by way of announcements, I'm actually speaking at the Build Up event on the 24th of October. Build up one of our sort of associate companies that we work very closely with. They've got, I think, their first live event. I know Shiro, you'd be familiar with Rosie. You've certainly had contact in the past. Quite an amazing young woman for
Yeah,
what she's achieved.
absolutely. Yeah, very credible, very experienced, and comes from a really experienced background with her father's company. So yeah,
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting over to London, and it's hard to beat live events sometimes. Zooms are great, webinars are great. Sometimes it's great being in a room with like-minded professional people. So looking forward to that. For any in that community, if you haven't booked already, book. And if you want to have a look at what Rosie does with Build Up, go on and have a look and see if it suits you. But look, today, as our community webinars tend to be, it's focusing in on sort of a particular part of sort of the property market, developer market, funding market. And today I'm really delighted to sort of unpick and unpack the SATIS group. So I've known Shiro for, I'm guessing, about 4.5 years now. Met Tom recently on one of my visits over to see the guys. Did a bit of a site visit around some of their properties and was really excited about what I saw, really impressed with what they've achieved. And what struck me was their journey out of residential, or still doing residential, but expanding into high-end commercial. So I thought, you know what, I kind of postponed another guest for this week. I thought, no, I've got to get Shiro and Tom on. So yeah, I'll let you guys just maybe explain a bit about your background, and then we'll get into a specific project that you've done.
yeah, absolutely. And thank you again, David, for coming, inviting us to speak on your webinar today. You've been doing some fantastic work over the last, well, certainly decade that I've been following you. So you probably don't hear it enough, but kudos to you. The property industry needs more people like you who are championing, the right way to do things. So again, thanks for inviting us on the webinar. So yeah, just a very quick brief of history. Tom and I have known each other since we were in school. 14, 15, something like that. So we're showing our age now, 20 years nearly. And we always used to joke at, friends' birthdays and Christmas parties that eventually one day we will do something in property together. And, 20 years, here we are, 20 years later, here we are. We've been operating as a business for 5 years now. And between myself, my younger brother, Sean, who's there in the background, we've got over 40 years of combined knowledge, experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly, of course, in property development. So we've formed our company 5 years ago, and our strapline for the business is reviving the past and building the future. It's quite directly linked to our strategies, which is buying existing buildings. We don't do new build, we don't do ground up. We only buy existing buildings and then do something nice with them.
Yeah, grand. Well, I'll skip on to Tom first. And Tom, give me just a bit of your background in terms of what you've done, and then of course in property too.
Yeah, you'll see from when Sherry talks, we've gone down a slightly different route to where we both are today. So I, fresh out of university, went down to London, where I worked for Foxton Estate Agents, kind of a bit of a baptism of fire, really, a bit of a Wolf of Wall Street kind of feel to the office, which was a good learning experience. And then I came back up to Manchester a few years later, where I worked for a company where we were purchasing PRS. So it was private rented developments that had fallen foul of the 2007 to 2009 crash. So we purchased up a lot of blocks of apartments and then traded those out to buy-to-let investors. Sort of the pinnacle of that was, you see there in 2017, we did a £10 million transaction, which was over 100 apartments in one go, which is a big deal for us. Whilst I was there, I also did a further education. I did a master's degree in real estate, which covers everything from a broad spectrum, from planning to legals to different types of finance and construction. And that led me on to get my next job, which was working for a family office, where I basically ran a property department where I was managing existing assets and also going on a development streak with them. So it involved, you see, my first development there was a PD scheme in Rotherham, of all places, near Sheffield. And then a mixed-use development I did in 2019, which was part commercial, part Resi. And then finally a new build development, which was sort of high-end townhouses that we did, which was a really good project.
Yeah, so obviously well experienced in a variety of things. You've certainly you've got the scars. You've
Yeah.
pioneered through all the learning experiences, which is great. And then Shiro, back over to you then, just in terms of your sort of journey in property.
Sure. So I bought my first house when I was 18, just before my 18th birthday, or after my 18th birthday, I should say. It's a buy-to-let property, which we still own actually today, David. The same lady's been in there for 18 and a half years. Just got four cats now rather than one when she first
Fantastic.
entered. So, one of those model tenants, she's been there. We don't really increase the rent a huge amount. She never causes any trouble. We get a Christmas card from her once a year, and it's like the perfect tenant. Then I got into rent to rents. Of course, when you start off in property, generally speaking, certainly at our age, didn't really have any money. So rent to rent seemed like the most apt and appropriate thing that we could get into. Then I got a day job at a a landlord, sorry, based in South Manchester. For those of you that are in Manchester, Fallowfield is where most of the students live. I know in most university towns you've got kind of concentrated areas. So I worked there for 4 years and I did my apprenticeship, you could say. So basically, worked for this chap, learn everything that there is to know at the time. And then we actually started buying, myself and my brother Sean started buying some HMOs, got a decent sized portfolio in Salford, sold that in 2016, and then started developing. You can see in my first PD scheme in 2017, which actually Tom helped sell two of those flats when he was working at his old job. So we did cross paths very early. And then our first multi-unit development, which was a mixed resi and commercial unit in 2018, 22 flats and a couple of commercial units, which again, I think you
I
sold that
sold
one,
that.
didn't you,
I
Tom?
was gonna say
Yeah.
I sold that as well.
Yeah, you sold that as well. So you can see we've kind of been in and out of each other's lives for the past decade or so. And obviously now consummated that 5 years ago with SATIS Group.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so what I'm looking to do today is really try and unpack this sort of high-end commercial. I'm going to set this up by the fact that I happened to go over to Manchester a couple of weeks ago. Hadn't seen you for a while, Shiro. I've been talking on the phone. It's like we need to tie up, we need to catch up. And you actually kindly took me around a number of your projects, some really trophy projects in
Mhm.
Manchester, some great views, etc. And this one particularly, I thought was stunning, and I could see the educational value. And you've done Resi, both of you getting together, and then you've done this one particularly, which is quite an exceptional one. I'm actually going to jump forward in the slides because sometimes people do have to drop off early. And we're actually running a site visit. Shiro and Tom have very kindly opened this up to the prop funders community. And in terms of some of the properties that they've done, ongoing properties in Manchester, and particularly looking at the one that we're going to talk through today, Saturday, the 25th of October, 11 to 2. Um, Shiro and Tom have kindly put on a bit of light sort of nibbles over
Bit of
lunchtime
lunch afterwards, yeah.
lunch afterwards. So if you want to quickly take a screen grab there or jump on your phone, get the QR code and let us know if you're interested in attending that. It'd obviously be limited numbers. We can't have too many. But first come, first serve basis, let us know if you're interested. It might be you want to understand this commercial high end better. It might be you're interested in JVing with developers in this space. It may be you're an investor and you're considering investing in this type of a property. Then the site visit would give you a really good insight into how this operates and make you much more informed whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So we'll be obviously mentioning that again in a minute. So getting back to here, yeah,
David,
this.
sorry, it's just worth noting probably, just as an add on to that, we've currently got live uh, 109,000 square foot of both residential and commercial that's live on site as we speak today. GDV is about 38 million, and I don't say that to impress anybody. It's just to show you the kind of enormity of what we've been able to create in a,
Mm.
relatively speaking, in the world of property, short space of time.
Yeah, and for a lot of that space, then on this site visit, you intend to
Correct.
take people around,
Yes.
show them it
Yeah.
completed live, and all that, which is brilliant. So I mean, it's going to be an unbelievable educational opportunity
Mhm.
to spend a couple of hours with you guys. You know, you're so
Yep.
successful. Your model is so sort of niche. You've delivered it, and I think it's a brilliant opportunity. So yeah, I think when people now see what you've done, I think for those that aren't sure whether to take the time on a site visit. I think whenever they hear the next 10 or 15 minutes, then they'll see the benefit. So 22 St. John Street. So just maybe give me a high end on what this is, and then we'll dig into the journey.
Sure. So this is our As you said, you used the word trophy asset. You could say one of our trophy assets that we were very privileged to be able to buy in 2022. So this is our award-winning office to office development. So I'm sure a lot of your attendees have heard of commercial to Resi or residential to HMO conversions. So this is office to office, otherwise known as a CMO, which is a commercial multiple occupancy. So this is probably worth just spending a few seconds on this. In the office market, there's generally three types of office strategies. Number one is your traditional office, where let's say you buy a building, you rent it out to Mr. David Johnson, who takes a 3-year lease, fully repairing insurance. So, David, you'd be responsible for all the dilapidations, the roof repairs, the bills, etc. That's a traditional office model, which everybody will know about. On the opposite end of that scale, so kind of option three, there's the co-working model, which everybody will have heard of WeWork, where you basically have a building where you pay a membership, that could be 50, 100 quid a month, but you don't have a desk. You can just basically go in and, like a gym membership, you can go in and use whatever equipment you want, sit at whatever desk you want. You generally pay for the coffees and teas, everything's as an upsell. And the bit in the middle, which is the one that we've done at 22, is a serviced office, where it's a bit like a HMO. You pay a fixed amount every month, but you get benefits. So all the utilities are included, the rates are included. There's generally some type of service. And when I say service, coffee, breakfast, receptionist, etc., etc. So that's what we've done here, David. This is a
Mm.
serviced commercial to commercial project, serviced office.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. So we're going to get into this sort of how this came about, how you sourced it, etc. For the regular attendees, we don't take comments in the chat box. Please put anything you want to say in the Q&A. If you have a question for Shiro or Tom, stick it in the Q&A. If we don't get round to it today or the conversation's moved on, I don't want to go back on, we can do a separate email and make sure your questions are answered. But we always want good engagement, so please do leave comments, observations, or questions into the Q&A, and we'll try and deal with it. So I think first and foremost, how what was the journey? Sometimes one of the best educational learnings in property is how people actually came across the property and how they secured it.
Right.
So
So
yeah, how did this happen?
I'll start off in sort of a bit of a reason why we got into the commercial world. So as people will know, the sort of the resi world is becoming tougher and tougher from a planning perspective, taking lots of time. Building regs are becoming more and more stringent. So we did have this plan of sort of diversifying a little bit of our portfolio, what developments we were doing. I tend to focus my time in the company in acquisitions and sort of speaking to agents, that kind of thing. And we came across 22 St John Street, which was off market. It was actually already in legals with another buyer who had failed to complete, dragged on, sort of usual story. And then because of the relationship I had with the agent that was selling it, they got in touch with us. We actually managed to pick it up for less than that price there, which was the advertising price. So it kind of came at the right time. Being honest with you, we bought it and we did still think, shall we do a residential scheme? There are other residential properties on the street, so it's been done. But we kind of turned our focus to the serviced office market from there.
So you mentioned two words there, two absolute buzzwords.
Yeah,
And I'm sitting thinking, right, let's see what he says, and as you would do, as you told the story, two really things. One, you mentioned relationship,
yeah,
and two, you mentioned timing. And it's
exactly.
so hard to teach people in property the value of those two things. People want everything now. They want the first project they look at to be the one that's under market value that goes really well. But those two things you mentioned, you can't just magic them up.
No,
Just speak to
exactly
that.
that. And I mean, the agent that we actually bought through is someone that I've known for a number of years. I've been away with him. We speak regularly on text, so he kind of knows who we are. And I think Shiro and I, we have got a reputation in the market for actually doing what we'll say we'll do, and that is completing
Mhm.
in the time period we say. You'll know that there's lots of buyers out there that they'll drag their heels, they'll try and chip the price at the last minute. It's nothing we do. We always try and commit to what we've agreed to at the beginning of the sort of the beginning of the legal process, shall we say.
Yeah.
David, we always talk about property being a relationship game, right? We're
Yeah.
we're in the business of property, but actually the actual real game we're in is it's a relationship business. And I
Yeah.
think this is a perfect example of actually because Tom's had a relationship with the agent for a decade, you know, these people end up being your friends. You end up having a business like we've become friends. You have a business relation with somebody and then it turns into friendship. And actually for them, you got to remember from an agent's point of view, if the agent is charging the vendor 1% or 2% or half, whatever it is, they're not getting paid until the property sells.
Hmm.
So, we always talk about due diligence on the property, but actually, from an agent's point of view, they also want to bring a credible buyer to the party.
Hmm.
Where let's say if you're the seller and I say to you, David, Tom's the best thing since sliced bread, but the price is slightly lower. You might go, you know what? I want certainty, which is what we had. I want certainty of the sale. I'll
Hmm.
take a little bit of a hit on the price, but I know that your client Tom
Yeah.
is really credible and he's going to perform.
Yeah, no, again, really, really important point because it's not all about price, as you say.
Mhm.
There are other factors. Interestingly, just to delve into this quickly, empty for 2 years. And I know
Yeah.
when I started out in property back in sort of 2000, 2001, I still remember the emotion that I had making an offer on the first property because in my mind it was like, well, there's all these property professionals in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Why haven't they bought this property if it's so good? And nervous and going, well, hang on,
What we're
everyone
doing.
else must see something I don't. So the fact this lay empty for 2 years, obviously lots of people in the market looked at it, and whether it was timing on their part or lack of relationship or whatever it was, that the fact it was empty for 2 years didn't put you off. You were confident
No,
enough in your analysis and feasibility study
Yeah.
on the property.
Yeah.
no, and I always joke and say if you give a building, let's say we're three developers here. If you give a building to three developers and ask them their opinion, you'll get four answers because people just have different ways of looking at something. And one man's treasure is, what's that saying? One man's trash is another man's treasure. So, we looked at this going, actually, we kind of don't really know what we're going to do with this. But because of the location, you talked about location before in your headline slide, we kind of have to buy it and kind of figure out what the hell we're going to do with it afterwards. We bought another site actually just down the road, which you've been to, David, and we're going to show your attendees of the site visit. We bought that last year. Absolutely prime bit of real estate in Manchester. It was on the market. Nobody bought it. And recently I've had people phoning me up going, "Oh, were you the guys that bought that? Oh, I wish I bought it." And I said, "Well, you didn't.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
wish you
No,
did, but you didn't.
exactly.
There was no secret. It was on the market. You just didn't see the angle that we saw."
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then we're getting now to the advantages of, I suppose, this property as well as this
Commercial.
sector of high-end commercial. But we should have highlighted this is in one of the most famous roads or famous streets in Manchester. You want to speak and describe the
Yeah,
location?
correct. So we are just off Deansgate. So for give a reference point for maybe some of your southern attendees, Deansgate is the Oxford Street equivalent of Manchester to what Oxford Street is to London. So we are just off Deansgate in Manchester, which is the prime drag in the city centre. And as well as anybody, David, the old adage of location, 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 sometimes, and we've done it before, not in this particular case, we've bought sites which are a little bit more expensive
Hmm.
purely because of the location. And that's an old grandma's tale that will never ever get old. It's absolutely spot on. And um, this is the last remaining Georgian street in Manchester. So post World War II, these properties, which most of them are listed, are over 100 years old, 18 something or other they were built. So for us, the location really sold this building. And, as it's got on the slide, one of the things, if you just talk about generally in commercial, prior to this building, Tom and I have only really done Resi. Like Tom said, you've done a few mixed use things, haven't you, Tom? And so have I, where we've got, commercial downstairs and Resi above. And generally speaking, I think that my view was quite blocked in that I thought, oh, commercial's a bit boring, it's a bit long, it takes loads of time, and commercial tenants and this and that. And that was probably my own lack of education around the strategy. But actually, fast forward 3 years now that we've done this and a bunch of others, one of the biggest things that we actually see is a few things. First of all, commercial tenants are super easy to deal with in the sense of if they don't pay, you can go in within 21 days and change the locks. You try doing that on a residential, you'll be on the front of the Daily Mail,
It's a
right?
very
That
good point.
you can't do that, number one. The second thing is if you're doing an FRI lease, which is a fully repairing and insuring lease, tenant is responsible for all refurb maintenance, dilapidations on the property. So as a landlord, you're going, well, we're getting rent and we're not having to spend anything. Great. Where a residential tenant, as you know yourself, David, you're a landlord, leaky tap, boiler's broken down, landlord
Mhm.
is responsible for that. So that's the second point. And the third point is, from a valuation point of view, if you get the right asset in the right area, valuation, the yields can be severely compressed compared to like buy-to-lets or HMOs. So if we were to say your average HMO yield is, I'm just going to guess it, 7%, let's say average in the UK,
Mhm.
and maybe a buy-to-let, depending on where you are in the country, is maybe a little bit less. We've seen commercial properties recently trade at 4 or 5%.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, when you look at it like a top trump card versus Resi, there's a lot of advantages. There are some disadvantages, of course, as well. It doesn't move as quick as Resi, and there are probably not a lot of buyers compared to Resi. But, for us as an asset class, if you can get the right thing, it's great.
Mm.
You're probably
Yeah.
aware that industrial has seen a massive growth over the last few years. Sorry, not industrial, logistics, Amazon
Yes.
and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great
That's
asset.
a no. That's a fair point. The stuff you've made there's some really good points. I think Tom, one of the things we discussed when I was over about, in some ways, you guys were ahead of the game, looking at a trend, and where there was still this
Yeah,
post-COVID stay at home.
yeah,
You guys were going,
absolutely.
actually, that's going to change again at some point. We want to be ahead of that change.
Absolutely. I think at the time we felt that the office market in Manchester in particular was at the bottom and it couldn't go any lower. And that was mainly driven by high interest rates, not a lot of transactions taking place, not a lot of debt buyers in the market. So it was at the bottom. I think also the trend in what people were looking for changed. So obviously COVID, everyone was working from home, companies shut down their large offices. So we saw companies coming back to the market that say didn't need 5,000 square foot office. They only needed a smaller office for hybrid working, where some staff members were doing 2 days in the office, 3 days at home. And that's where we saw the market growing, and hence we found the same at 22 with the customers or tenants that we've got. They've all come from much larger office spaces, and they're all working on a hybrid system. So some staff some days, some staff the other days. So yeah.
Yeah. But listen, some really good sort of takeaways there, and I think that's what impressed me about you guys when I did this sort of site visits with you is that yes, you can be really successful in your niche, and that's fine. If it works, great. If it's not broke, don't have to fix it. There's a great adage in life and in business, but it's also about being open to change,
Yeah.
open to evolving the model. And I think that's so important because eventually, if you just stay in one industry in one sector, at some point, change happens that catches you out. It's just life,
Exactly.
and therefore I think it's really impressive. And I'm sort of looking down the attendee list there, and with people on here who've invested a lot of money in property as investors, and I see there's developers on here, and again these are really good takeaway points about how to make sure that you can move with the changes in the market, whether you're an investor or a developer. That's so important. So we'll run through quickly a couple of the before and afters. If you want to just make any quick points on those,
Yeah,
then we'll
I
get to the
just wanted to
financials.
make one quick note before you do that, if that's okay, David. So
Yeah.
I always say that as a developer, and you could say as an investor as well, we talked about people before, that property being a people's industry. If you look at it from a helicopter view, our job as a developer, we're in the value add business.
Hmm.
So what I mean by that is when we're buying a property, we're adding value because we bought it under market, or we're adding value through planning, or we're adding value through refurb, which we'll see in a second. So actually, the skills that if some of your attendees are sitting here thinking, well, all sounds great, but I've only got experience in one particular sector, it's the same principle, it's the same valuation, it's the same design process, it's the same yield process. It's just a different product. So it's
Hmm.
like, selling apples in a shop versus selling bananas. Yes, it's a different fruit, but the actual principle of what we're doing is exactly the same. It doesn't really change. There are some nuances, of course, but it doesn't change.
Yeah, no, that makes good sense. So here's what the building was like when you purchased it.
Yep.
You're probably going to draw attention to the tiles, which I know
Yeah,
were
yeah.
a terrible story.
It was a typical sort of 90s fit out. The previous occupier had been on a long lease. They were a solicitors firm, so it was it was tired, and they had some crazy decoration you can see from the blue ceilings. Uh, and if I draw your attention to the middle photo on the top there, that's the main entrance to the building, and they had put down a tile throughout. And if David goes on to the next slide, you'll see exactly what they were covering up, which was crazy. Yeah, so that's the strip out. So I think, as we said, in terms of work wise, the program on this job was a lot quicker than what we were expecting compared to the residential development because we weren't going back to brick. It was a very simple strip out, and then obviously that brought our program down in terms of fit out as well. So yeah, there's drawing, and then yeah, there's the post. So you can see from the bottom that tile there is the original tile from when it was a Georgian house back in the 1800s. So somebody covered that up. We found it and it was in incredible condition, didn't really need much work doing to it. And then yeah, as throughout the project, we went for a luxury feel. So we are at the top of the market in terms of pricing. That's reflected in terms of the specification. If you look at our comparables around our competition in the area, we are of a higher end in terms of spec. So yeah.
You can see, David, it's got quite a West End vibe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite, West End London, old school, contemporary, high ceilings, beading on the wall, that kind of what we call the school radiator. I don't know if you can see the radiator in the
Yeah.
bottom picture. Do you
Yeah,
remember the old iron radiators at school?
yeah.
I certainly was the guy sitting in the back of the class, so clearly was a naughty child at school. So those big black iron radiators, that's kind of the look that we were kind of going for.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's something really cool, I think, about
Hmm.
coming into a building that's so modern in terms of the design and the feel but walking across a floor that's over 100 years old.
Yeah.
And just thinking how many people walked over that that
Yeah.
floor, as you say, as
Exactly.
far back as the 1800s. There's something really cool about that, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was great.
Absolutely.
Really, again, the feel was excellent. I used to be involved and had an office in WeWork in London many years ago. I'm certainly still a Regis member, so I'm familiar with this kind of space. But again, I love the energy, and even when we did the walk around, people were coming out to the communal kitchens, and you've
Yeah.
got some really high end clients in there.
Yeah.
Big companies, well known brand names, and there's just a really professional feel to the building.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said before, it's location driven, and we are on one of the nicest streets in the city. It traditionally has been home to barristers. It was previously called the Harley Street of Manchester, so it had a lot of medical professions on there. So our tenants have stayed similar. We've got sort of wealth managers, your private health clinics. Whereas if you compare us to our competition in the city, there is a broad spectrum of types of serviced offices. Some at the lower end, as you said, like the Regis's, some sort of mid-market in the northern quarter, which are very much design focused and you kind of graphic designers, that kind of tenant. So we did design it with that in mind. So we wanted to attract the sort of best of the best.
hmm Well, there's again just another example of the finish, and again we'll send these slides out to all the attendees. So come on to the financials and just picking up on what Tom said there, Shiro. I know
Hmm.
you've mentioned this a few times when we've been chatting. You've no problem asking for a premium rent because of the high quality finish, and
Hmm.
that's your niche market, and you find it works very well, which of course feeds into the financials that we're talking about now.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, David, because we talk about let's talk about sales for a second. So generally people think that actually if you lower your price, you get more sales in life. I'm just talking very generally. But
Hmm
what's really interesting, we've had a bit of a wobbly economy over the last 5 years, and some of the most expensive brands in the world are doing really well. Why is that? Because people are prepared to pay a premium for a product. A lot of P's there. Um, and I always say we've had this conversation. We're of the Deliveroo generation where actually, the youth of today are prepared to pay 20% premium or 30% premium for somebody to pick them up from their house or deliver a meal to their door when they could go to Sainsbury's and buy it for a tenth of the price. So the principle is exactly the same, and that's what we've kind of done here is to said actually we are in the top probably 10 or 15% quartile, not quartile, but top 10, 50% of most expensive offices in the market. You'd think that that's a bit crazy to do it considering, but we're full. We've got, I think we've got one room available for a commercial building that's quite good. Anything over 80% occupancy is really, really good, but we are expensive. but
Yeah.
the type of, you tend to attract a certain type of customer that maybe is not as sensitive to somebody paying £150 a desk, let's say in the Regis where
Yeah.
you are, where actually
Yeah.
£150 to them might be a lot of money, whereby for our clients, one of them turns over 300 million a year.
Yeah.
So it's all relative, right? It's all
It is,
relative.
and you don't have to be trying to get every single client in the market. You
No,
just need your niche clients,
exactly.
and how many different clients have you got, or how many could you have in the building if it was fully let completely? What sort of
We could, in theory, have 16.
Yeah.
The
16?
building's split up into 16 offices, which are they all vary in size, from the smallest being a 3-desk office to the biggest being a 12-desk.
Hmm.
We've got some tenants that actually occupy more than one, and that have
Yeah.
actually already in the 2 years have grown from one to two. So I think we've got 7 tenants, 7 companies, and 7 businesses. Sorry.
Over 15 rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes
I
sense.
think what I think the one of the tenants has got one, two, three, four, five
Yeah.
rooms.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. No, excellent. So we're down to about sort of 5 minutes or so before wrap up. Financials then, obviously pictures are great and all the rest of it, but ultimately it's about the accounts and it's about particularly thinking from an investor hat point of view.
Hmm.
And I think your model is that you tend to work with private investors. So you
Yeah.
do a bit of senior debt, but then you'll be bringing in your private investor, sort of high net worth, sophisticated investor type client. So wearing that hat, ultimately they want to see the financials. So just talk us through the financials of this one, which is completed. It's rented out. It's
Yep.
working.
Yeah. So you can see there the budget on the left-hand side. The middle column is what we spent. I always feel that it's good to be really transparent. So you can see that the total cost, we were over budget by just shy of 300K. But actually, if we analyze that a little bit further, the actual main overrun was the interest rates and the finance cost, sorry. And this was, if you remember, David, during the Liz Truss period of 3 or 4 months at the back end of 2022, when we went from, the historic low interest rates to, of course, 4 or 5%, I think, in the period of like 3 or 4 months. So our interest cost doubled pretty much overnight while we were purchasing the property. And I will make one point. We didn't go back to the seller and say, sorry, guys, interest rates have gone up. We need to chip the price. We don't do that, which I know some developers would have done. So again, coming back to the reputation thing. So you can see the total cost of the building, the project, including the finance cost, was just shy of 4.4 million, with a overspend of, I think it worked out about 7%, which for our first commercial project, with the whole interest rate thing going a bit
Hmm.
crazy, not bad, not bad at all. I think
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
pretty happy with the end result that we've got from a financial point of view. And then
Yeah.
we had a valuation report done, which I think you've got a
Yeah, I think
slide
that's
on.
that's the next slide. I
Yeah.
think it's really good the way you've broken that down in terms of what you budgeted and then what you actually spent, because that is important. And no matter how careful you are in the planning, no matter your experience and expertise in property, there's going to be things that are going to influence your original budget. But you're going to be up in some, down in others,
Yep.
and that just all comes down to experience. So that then fed into your valuation, which is the key stat.
Yeah, so you can see that, MV, or what we call market value, at over £7 million, with a rent of about 738. We're about, I think, 650 or 620 at the moment, rent wise, gross rent wise. So like I said, we've got one room available. So we've really what the Americans call smashed a home run on this. I think it was the right time, right location, good little bit of luck because of the old buyer. And, I must say, we're very fortunate to have assembled a really good professional team.
Mm.
So Tom and I can take, I guess, a certain amount of credit, but actually it's the team around us that were able to produce this product that eventually went on to win an award last year.
Yeah, that's exactly that. So awards that are not bought awards,
Hmm.
not sponsored awards. Obviously, your property network. I know the guys down there, Ant and down there.
And
So
yeah,
good guys, and certainly they like to recognize sort of excellence and high achievement when they see it within their YPM magazine. So yeah, you're featured on the front, which is yeah, a nice
absolutely.
accolade to have, which is really good. And then you also, we'll go back to the site visits now to sort of finish off. But I mean, you now have actually, which is I think the door I'm standing in front of there. You've now actually managed to secure another property in this same street
Correct.
to effectively take the model that you've just delivered so successfully and replicate it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you said at the beginning, sometimes if it ain't broke,
Don't fix it. And you might learn a few wee things. You might be able to learn a few wee things,
yeah,
but
some microcosms of what we do differently. Tom, I think you picked up on a couple of things with the conference rooms and stuff, but they're,
Yeah,
you know, micro things that we need to change.
yeah,
yeah,
brilliant. Okay. Well, look, there again is the QR code and the bit.ly for a site visit. I think it's going to be a really, really good, really good couple hours. Manchester's pretty easy to get to, flights, trains, car, whatever. And certainly it'll be well worth. I'm just Jimmy Shiro on top of one of the other buildings. Again, very much a trophy asset in Manchester. Phenomenal view. I think that was what, a 7 or 8 story building from memory. I
Eight
can't
story,
remember.
that's right.
8 story building. Yeah, and again, just fantastic. So and I love also the fact that you guys focus just on Manchester. You don't get you're blinkered, you're focused, the noise of what's happening in other cities and opportunities that come. You're just no, no. This is our area. We are experts here.
Yep.
You've sort of born and raised in the city, and therefore there's a real expertise that comes with that. So I'll leave this slide just another sort of 30 seconds before I wrap up. But if anyone want, click on the QR code, get your Bitly link, reach out to you with questions, and get yourself registered for this site. But it's going to be really well worthwhile, whether you're say developer yourself, whether you're looking for JV opportunities. That's a conversation that the guys are open to. Whether you're an investor looking to invest in this type of property, again, using this as an educational visit would be very, very beneficial. So you can reach out to us if you need to from there. So I'll give you both a last sentence just when I finish wrapping up here in about a minute or two. And if there are any other questions, people can reach out directly. So next webinar is the third Wednesday of November, and we're going to have actually planning gain experts. So Kat and Ed are coming on. Again, they've got quite an interesting model around land sourcing, and again, have an interesting team and how they monetize that with an education side to their business. So we're going to be looking at that next month, which is going to be quite cool. For those of you that haven't recently been on, there are some new podcasts that are on our property funding podcast channel. We've actually got another 2 that are due to be uploaded in the next maybe 2 weeks. But again, some really good podcast guests on there from people that have lost 20 million in property projects through to the youngest female developer in the UK, husband and wife teams, development, Resi, all sorts of stuff. Really, really good variety. Lorraine Thomas there was one of our recent guests, well known in the industry, phenomenal story in terms of what she's achieved in property. So yeah, hey, get on there and have a look. And yeah, what are we about? We're all about saving property developers and investors time and money, structuring, sourcing, simplifying property funding. That's what we do as prop funders, happily to work with developers particularly, and investors, sort of linking both sides to the equation. Developers can't really do what they do unless people invest, and investors need projects to invest in. So we try and make deals happen. So if you want to book a quick call with me, again, there's a Bitly link. Click it there. Most of you have my details anyway. You get me on LinkedIn, and we'll be able to connect with you and see if we can help provide a service. So that is the end of today. Spot on, 13:46. That's just about right. So final takeaways, final sort of key parting of information to you two guys.
yeah. So I think I'd like to draw attention to it's good to diversify in terms of the market. I think we really enjoyed doing the 22 St John Street development. It was nice to get our teeth stuck into something a bit different, something very heavily design led. As I say, it's diversification that's important.
Shiro?
Yeah, I just kind of reiterate the point I make. Your professional, not even professional team, the stakeholders that you have on your books, we have about 200 to 200 stakeholders from electricians to solicitors. Super, super important. And
Yeah.
we kind of use the analogy of not just in business, but I think not just in property, sorry, but in business, is that business is and entrepreneurship is like a sport. It's a team sport, and for those of you that watch team sports, football, both Tom and I are big football fans. If one person doesn't perform, or one person, it's a team effort, and you've got to have the right players on the pitch in order to perform. So yeah, we try and make sure that we've got the best, strikers and defense in our team to be able to perform through them.
Fantastic. We better stop before you get me talking about football. Otherwise, it might be an hour and a half long podcast rather than 45 minutes. So listen, guys, really appreciate your time. This will be on our YouTube channel within about an hour. We'll send the recording out anyway to those on the distribution list. But hope you enjoyed today. Fantastic insights. Again, massive thank you to Shiro and Tom. And everyone take care. See you again next month.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having us
Thanks,
again.
David.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.